Jim Lyall, as a friend and a colleague, is Associate Director at the Community Service Council here in town. I'm embarrassed to say that for 18 years of our being here, I had no awareness of the Community Service Council. It has been here for 70 years and has been involved with many projects in town that now are completely independent, but they got started through Community Service Council. Jim Lyall is also responsible for heading up the planning for our Veterans Initiative Committee out of the Community Service Council. And Jim, welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you very much. We'll see if we can get the technology working for you. All that really is a short video on YouTube that I was hoping to play for you to give you the benefit of seeing some connectivity within the community. If we don't get it open, I'll go ahead and describe it to you. First of all, I want to express congratulations to Fellowship Lutheran Church for taking the initiative. You are unique, I think, in the faith community for really taking on study and learning more about the relationship between veterans, your congregation, and the community. I was in a worship service many years ago, and it was really the very first time that I felt the connectivity between faith and the veteran status. This was a large church service. There were probably about 1,000 people there, and the senior minister called, starting with World War II, I think it might have been Veterans Day weekend, called for veterans to stand up, and he started with War II veterans, and the men in that room from World War II stood up. Then he called the Korean War. Then he called the Cold War. Then he called Vietnam. And before he was finished, most of the men in that congregation, in that worship service, were standing. And I felt both empowered and humbled by that experience. And I came to understand just how important faith is in our lives as a veteran. It was like a light went off for me. The Community Service Council, as Irv has suggested, is not really a name that you're going to automatically just hear and understand. It's been around for 70 years. It's a nonprofit, community-based planning agency, funded a long time by the United Way. We use a lot of private foundations and grants to do the work that we do. Some of our projects are underwritten by government grants or contracts. But historically, our most long-term funding has come from the United Way. We started serving just a few counties around Tulsa, but some of our programs are actually serving all of eastern Oklahoma, and our lives actually take us around the state from time to time on different subjects. But it has been around since 1941. It's led by our board president right now is Charlie Jackson, who is a retired deputy police chief. Stephen Nell is our, who's with the vice president at the Bank of Oklahoma. Irv Jensen is on our board, as are a few other leaders who I'll refer to. So it's a pretty diverse board as far as the background of the people who support it. Well, this morning I'm here to talk about the health and well-being of our veterans, and I was going to ask one of you to read this, but I'm defining for you community as family members, schools, local and state government, healthcare providers, human service organizations, congregations like yours, of course, and last but not least, of course, is the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. We began looking at this subject some years ago, and we realized that I think it was at one of our mental health planning meetings. I was facilitating that meeting. And people were coming up to me and saying, you know, we have veterans coming to our door. Almost as if they didn't belong there. And being a veteran myself, I immediately thought it may be time to start advocating. But we started doing some further investigation. We realized that really our community wasn't prepared, our social service community particularly wasn't prepared. We began in 2010 looking at that more closely, and we came upon an organization called Wounded Warrior Project, which is based in Florida. It has offices in different parts of the country. I'll say a little bit more about that later, but I want to read to you something that's, we've almost adopted it as our motto as far as veterans go, but this is in their 2011 policy statement. The path of a veteran's transition and successful community reintegration, if it is to occur, ultimately occurs in that community. And so really it's upon all of us to figure out where we belong in the veteran's life. And Northeast Oklahoma veterans typically do not return to military bases. They do return to their families, to their homes, to their congregations, and it becomes important then for all of us to be connecting with them. I don't think you'll hear very often someone in the military, particularly a soldier, say, I can't wait to get back to the fort. Typically it's going to be, I can't wait to get back home, can't wait to get back to my family. If they want to go to the fort, it's probably because that's where their family is. So I think it's upon us to think about this as much as we can. So in our early days, we really began taking a closer look at this in 2010. And in the early days, we came to some realizations about the importance of community services and connectivity. First of all, our National Guard and reservists from Oklahoma were huge participants in the war in Afghanistan and Iraq. Many Guard members, unlike in my day, most of the Guard members were married and had children. At the beginning of 2012, I was told by the National Guard that we had about 400 men and women serving in Afghanistan. Of that 400, 300 had spouses and 300 or more had children. So they are leaving one of the most important aspects of their life behind them to go serve. Many were obligated to multiple deployments. The U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs was trying very hard to keep up with the demand, but it was having difficulty doing so. We had a lot of outpouring in need for services that the VA was able to provide, is able to provide. We also were getting, as I referenced, organizations like Family and Children's Services, Counseling and Recovery Services, Domestic Violence Intervention Services, were having that experience of men and women showing up, spouses showing up for assistance, children needing counseling because of the active duty condition of another member of the family. We also learned that organizations like the VFW, Veterans of Foreign War, were already engaged in helping our new veterans. We also know that female veterans were a large component of our veteran force for the first time, and were very involved in getting services. James Floyd, the director of the Jack C. Montgomery VA in Muskogee, which serves this part of the state, told us recently that they were serving, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, 900 female veterans, and I believe they have just created a special unit for VA for female veterans, which I think is critical to where we're headed as a country and the importance of the VA. As you can see, when we start talking about family, start talking about different populations participating in war, we can begin to understand why it's important to have diversified response from our community. Addictions and rape trauma are another part of the military experience. You'll see, if we can get the video up, you'll see a young man in this video that had really developed a strong addiction to pain medication, I believe, when he was on active duty. I've seen presentations on rape that occurred during the military, but it isn't exclusively female. It is happening with males as well. You can see the challenge that our community and the VA have in addressing that particular subject. And as we'll see in this video, some of our veterans, we've made a pretty quick shift in our Veterans Court from serving mostly Vietnam-era Desert Storm veterans to now OEF, OIF veterans.
Military service takes a toll on the lives of the men and women who serve our nation. According to the Department of Veterans Affairs, up to 20% of Iraq and Afghanistan veterans suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. Many abuse alcohol and drugs. Some become violent. Tulsa's Veteran Treatment Court was created to help troubled vets turn their lives around. Liz Exon learned the court has become a model for the rest of the nation.
Stand shut and salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Showing respect for the flag and each other sets the Tulsa Veterans Treatment Court apart from most criminal courtrooms in the nation. The atmosphere is also very different.
Judge next, Eric Shears, also promoting to phase 5, the final phase.
The court started nearly 4 years ago and is enjoying remarkable success.
We have a 96% retention rate, which is very, very excellent, and we have a 92% graduation rate.
Rose Ewing established Veterans Treatment Court after learning that 1/3 of all people arrested on felony charges during a given month in Tulsa County were military veterans. Michael Ayers was charged with 3 DUIs in just 9 months after returning from active duty in Afghanistan.
Once I got back, started the drinking real heavily, nightmares, etc., everything that comes with the package. Problems with the spouse, the child, and then ended up, was it maybe 6 months after me being back, divorce had already started.
A picture of Ayers, seen here in the middle, was published in the New York Times. The associated article reveals his heroics in the battlefield. Upon
coming back to Fort Hood, Texas, I didn't even get my full 90 days reintegration. I probably got maybe 50, and then I was booted out, said thank you, honorable discharge, and sent me out into the world.
A myriad of services provided through the court helps heirs and all the vets on the road to recovery.
Services for PTSD or traumatic brain injury, or perhaps they suffer from, substance abuse or some other type of mental health. A number of veterans also might have military sexual trauma.
When veterans enter the program, they are assigned case managers, mentors, and field supervisors who make home visits. The vets have curfews and most are tested regularly for drug or alcohol use. They also must receive counseling. The Department of Veterans Affairs plays a key role in their treatment.
I communicate treatment progress, the kind of things that the veterans would be working on in treatment, what they're accomplishing, what they're struggling with, what types of treatment they're being provided to address their needs, back to the treatment court in our weekly staffings.
The U.S. Department of Labor helps those without jobs find work. Some have more immediate needs.
If they express difficulty in their current housing or they are homeless already, then we immediately will connect them with the proper resource to solve that issue.
Judge Rebecca Nightingale gets to know each veteran she sees once a week.
And you've been making your appointments okay?
Yes.
Because I know you definitely schedule yourself pretty tightly.
Yes.
And that's been going okay.
Yes, I've been making all my appointments.
Okay.
And she asks a question you won't hear in many other courts.
You're coming back 10/8.
Oh, yeah.
And what do you need help with between now and then?
If they need any kind of help, a veteran service representative is in court to assist them.
Yeah, help gas money, just to maybe meet their appointments or find a job. Hey, here's $25 for gas, and take it down here to the Quick Trip. We work with one, in our situation, we work with one Quick Trip there, and they know it's us, and they give them $25 worth of gas.
John Cloud is a Vietnam War veteran, so he understands the unique troubles soldiers may have. Every person who works for the court is either a veteran or is a family member of one.
It's fun to work with the veterans too, because they're so responsive to authority, because that's what they did in the military. So that whole courtroom experience is so different than anything I've ever had as a judge or as a prosecutor.
Judge Nightingale and others who work to keep veterans on track meet with court representatives from other states each month. Tulsa is one of 3 cities in the nation chosen as a mentor court to teach other jurisdictions how to set up and run a veterans treatment court. Visitors also observe court sessions. Before it gets underway, vets check in with court personnel.
What did I do wrong this time?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing.
No dilutes or nothing?
Would you like me to make one up?
Because of his DUI charges, Ayers can't drive. Today, he gets some good news.
What's your disability rating?
30%. It's about to jump.
You need to get me a copy of that award letter.
Okay.
Or that award letter that says you have a 30% disability rating, and we can get you a reduced fare bus pass.
Not all vets get good news. If they have slipped in their treatment program in any way, they have to pay the consequences.
The other part that you're not going to like is you're getting a GPS.
What's that? Our GPS for what?
Those very new to the program face a vigorous schedule of accountability.
I had intake assessments at 2 different places. I have to wear a scram, which is an ankle monitor that tests for alcohol every 30 minutes. I had to get that on. I have to get it downloaded twice a week. I now have to see a counselor twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays. Let's see, I have to see my supervision officer on Thursdays. I have to be here at 2 o'clock on Mondays.
As veterans proceed in the program, they receive less supervision. Connie Broderick will soon graduate from the program. She's been reporting to the court since she was charged with DUI and facing prison time 2 years ago. Now, Connie is sober and embracing life.
Oh my goodness, I'm happy, I'm free, I have my family back. I'm not in trouble. I mean, it's just like everything.
Giving back to veterans makes the court's work satisfying.
We owe them that debt, and that it's our responsibility, but it's also our privilege to be able to help them.
So far, 136 people have completed the Tulsa Veterans Treatment Court, and none has been rearrested.
Well, thank you for giving some focus to that this morning. What I really like about this particular video is its demonstration of community. And I don't know if you noticed, there were the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs was represented, my organization was represented, the courts, the district attorney office, you saw law enforcement in the room, the VFW was represented in John Cloud's presence, and it is really the community coming around these individuals. Michael Ayers came to our Veterans Initiative meeting, and 2 things that remain with me is that that I didn't hear today was that he served our country in 3 deployments in 5 years. That's a lot to ask, and that is not uncommon for many of our current veterans. The other thing that he and another veteran described during their meeting with us is the frequent and easy access to pain medication during their military service, and they both confirmed that pain medication was distributed to them, and these are their words, like Skittles. So we are using extraordinary ways of helping our men and women serve, but it is not always, in my mind, the best practice. And it will probably continue, however, until we figure out an alternative to multiple deployments. I am pleased to also point out that not only was there a lot of community interaction, but you probably heard toward the end there's quite a bit of accountability, constant contact with the court, the ankle monitor. There are other things that are much different than a typical court appearance. But think about those two fellows that you saw and the female who would be languishing in prison if it weren't for our community embracing a different way of helping them. So we go forward with our Veterans Initiative. We have leadership from Irv Jensen, of course, also Bob Ironton, who's a retired general from the Oklahoma Air National Guard, and Dr. Lanny Endicott from the Oral Roberts University School of Social Work. You can imagine what an awesome team they are. I want to point out, too, that Irv mentioned at the beginning about moral injury, and we are using resources as they become available to us. Right now we have a Wounded Warrior Project grant for almost $200,000. We're using that funding to train mental health therapists in a mental health therapy technique called cognitive processing therapy. What's most important about that is that it is a best practice, evidence-based way of really helping our veterans and their family members. But it also was helpful to us. They have those resources. We brought a gentleman by the name of Dr. William Nash to Tulsa a while back to talk about moral injury. About 50 or more people participated in that workshop. And I want to share what was expressed to me the next day by one of the people who participated in that workshop. She said, my veteran nephew has had all of the advantages in life. He comes from a good family. He grew up in a good church. He has a terrific education. And she said, our family has totally not understood why he's just languishing since his military deployment. We just thought he would pick up where he left off. And she said, thanks to this workshop, I now understand that war changed him. And he is suffering from moral injury. He's in that place where he's trying to understand, I think, the conditions of having fought and having people shoot at him, having participated in the death of others is an awesome responsibility to carry, and does require all of our support. I think in closing, I want to just say, when as a community, we can do lots of things. I think on a personal level, we can invite conversation with our veterans that's non-judgmental. We can do what you're doing, keep up the great work of a congregation. We can, as employers or those in employment, we can think about employing veterans and reaching out to the universities that are educating them. And as citizens, we can investigate policies and positions of our local, state, federal government, and our elected officials. And I think it's important to know where they stand on all of those. So thank you for your attention today.
Juli McNeil represents the other part of our program today, and clearly a major anchor for our veterans, returning veterans. About 50% of the veterans that Jim had mentioned are really in the community and using community resources. The others, hopefully more, are using the VA resources. Juli, please. She is not new to us. This is at least your second, if not third time? Second time with us. Social worker with the VA in charge of the suicide prevention program out there. So, Juli, if you will share about the VA, and then we will have some winding up comments at the end. Thank you very much for coming.
Sure, thank you for having me. And this is going to be kind of informal. I want to share with you some things that VA is doing, some resources available to our veterans, so you're aware of some services. And then I am going to share with you some helpful websites that you can go to, and where there's more resources there. Just to start out with, this is our local VA resource guide. If you don't have one, you might pick one up in the back. I started this years ago before I ever started working in the suicide prevention program, as we do a lot of outreach, especially in our program. We're tasked with doing a minimum of 5 outreach events per month. So we take this out with us. We also give this to our vets who leave our inpatient psych unit. It's in the ER, and we're looking at distributing it more throughout the VA. And certainly if you want any for the church or your organizations, let us know. And I update it when there's any significant changes going on. We've had a large hiring of our homeless program, so there's updates in here. So at least quarterly we update this and have it available for veterans and their families. And just to tell you a little bit about what's in here, it starts with how to access services, where they need to go if they have never enrolled, and to find out maybe if they are eligible for VA care. There are some veterans, if they are in a higher category due to income, etc., may not be eligible for VA, but I always tell them, don't hesitate to go into the business office to check that out. They do look at outside medical costs of the veteran and their family that may offset what the income guidelines are for those particular veterans. For our newer returning veterans, we are obligated to see them for up to, I think they increased it to 5 or 7 years now, I can't recall, where they are not billed if it's anything related to their service. So if they come in, they fall off a horse type of thing, something that wasn't service related, then they may receive a bill if they are put into a billing category. But anything that could potentially be service related, or definitely is, they are not billed for that. Once they're enrolled, they are assigned, all veterans are assigned to a primary care team if they decide they want to receive their medical care at the VA. And for our returning veterans, there is information in here with staff for the Operation Enduring Freedom, Iraqi Freedom Team, but this is also a separate flyer specifically for that team. If you know of any newer returning veterans, every VA has a team that works with veterans, the new returning veterans. So we have Nanette Waller, who's the program manager, and she's a social worker. We have 2 social work case managers. One here in Tulsa is Paget Hill, and then we have a nurse case manager and a social work case manager, Ms. Gogi, and then a transition patient advocate, Louis Gibson. And they are key folks in for the veteran to transfer from DOD to VA as smoothly as possible. My team goes out with them when they do events at the Guard and Reserve units, the post-deployment health reassessments, the yellow ribbons, and we work with folks there. So this would be probably the first point of contact your veterans should have when they're coming back from service. So, and they're there to help them with any kind of red tape or bump in the road. So that's what they're there for. Okay. And just talk a little bit about my program, the Suicide Prevention Program. It's been around since '07, where it's been a more specific, formalized program. And after about a year, I was able to, VA funded 2.5 additional staff. And we have a suicide prevention coordinator at our 41st Street clinic up here. I live in Broken Arrow, but I work at the Muskogee VA, and am up here when I can for meetings and such. And I have a case manager there and a half-time admin support person. So some of the key things we do are we respond to veterans who call the National Veterans Crisis Line. Have you all heard about the National Crisis Line for veterans? The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline has had the crisis line or the suicide hotline around for quite some time. So what VA has done several years ago is partnered with them, and now there's an option that says if you're a veteran or a family member of a veteran or military, U.S. military, press 1. And that takes the veteran to the VA in Canandaigua, New York, where crisis line staff answer the phone 24/7. They've hired 50 more responders recently. They have backup centers, and so they've thought of everything to really make sure that that line gets answered promptly. And I'm told it's within just a matter of seconds that the line is picked up. So if the veteran calls is in imminent risk, they're going to work with that veteran and send emergency services out and try to get them into the nearest facility, which is not always a VA. But part of what my team does is try to locate where they are. If they want to come to the VA and need hospitalization, then we follow up with them there. And if not, we work with the providers in the community if they want the outpatient care at the VA, as we help get that set up when they discharge. Sometimes they just call because they need someone to talk to, or they're looking for a resource, or it might be a new veteran that does not know where to start and they call for resources, or how do I get into my nearest VA. And we have had a few dishonorably discharged veterans that call as well. We will still work with them and hook them up with our community resources, like Jim's group, whatever they might need. And if there's anything that the VA cannot do for those veterans or other veterans that are eligible, we do assist in referring them to community resources. So we do use the community quite a bit. Okay. So as you all probably know, if you have not heard, that suicide is a big issue, not just within the VA. So almost over 37,000 people die by suicide every year. And so as far as veterans are in relation to that number, what the latest numbers we have from the VA are about 20% you can expect are veterans. And keep in mind that not all veterans use the VA, actually less than 50% do. But those numbers come from my team and suicide prevention teams across the nation in VAs that report those numbers up to our national folks. And how we get those numbers are through reports by the veteran to a provider that they've had a recent attempt, or if there's been a death, and then we submit numbers on up. And we use that data locally to do aggregate reviews to see what's going on in our area with veterans who have had attempts and also deaths. So when one of those forms are filled out on someone who's had an attempt, we're not just looking at that to collect numbers, but are there some care coordination, case management services they might need? And so we will work with them and the providers to determine that. And what we also do, if it's someone who's had a recent suicide attempt, they get follow-up for 90 days on what we call the enhanced care package. And it's where they have a flag placed on their chart called the high risk for suicide flag. And because we know by research that those who've had a recent attempt are likely to reattempt in the near future. So they get enhanced care for the 90 days. The first 30 days they get weekly contact. The second and third month it's a minimum of 1 contact. Of course, it can be more frequently, whatever is determined by the veteran and the provider seeing them. And at the end of the 90 days, we work with the providers to look at if they're ready to come off the flag status. They're maybe not at high risk anymore. They might be low or moderate. And it's just a way to alert, not only do they get the enhanced care, but it's a way to alert other providers that might see them. If they are some that don't follow up on a regular basis, we can't get them to come in. If they come through the ER or call in crisis, then the alert on their chart would be a way to notify that provider. I need to ask them how they're doing and see what's going on with them. So we follow and help coordinate care for those veterans, as well as some others that just might be at risk, trying to do prevention. And as far as other outreach, we try to do some other stuff in the community. I'm actually going later this month to it's a Muskogee Ministerial Alliance meeting to talk with them about suicide prevention. So pretty much anywhere they want us, we will go and discuss the issues, resources, and how to get help. And we do a training called Operation Save, which is recognizing signs and symptoms of someone who might need help, how to ask them the question, validate their experience, and where to go to get them help. We do that with all of our staff at the VA, and we have a community version we do of that as well. So, okay, just for time's sake, so just so you all are aware of what else is in this, because if you don't take anything else out of here from the VA, be sure you take this. It has some helpful numbers on primary care clinic team, social workers. They are key folks in those that just either walk in or have appointments that need to see someone that day for services. And we've got behavioral medicine services in here. We do have our 14-bed inpatient psychiatric unit in Muskogee. We have outpatient substance abuse counseling. We have an intensive outpatient program both in Tulsa and Muskogee, where they come for 3 days a week to have intensive therapies. We contract with 12 and 12 if someone needs residential care, etc. We use them. We also have other VAs we can refer to for more inpatient residential type substance abuse. Of course, post-traumatic stress, we have teams for that both here and in Muskogee. Yeah.
Can you just briefly explain the difference between the VA medical care versus the VA regional office?
Okay.
Because I think that's confusing for people.
Okay, that's a good point. So, so you've got different entities of the VA, and we are the VA Healthcare, VHA. So Department of Veteran Affairs covers the VHA, VA Healthcare, all the medical centers, which under that umbrella is also the Veterans Readjustment Counseling Centers, which we have one here in Tulsa that you may be familiar with, which is at the old Eastland Mall. Those centers were set up around the Vietnam era because we did not do so well during that time in accepting our Vietnam vets. So it was out in the community instead of in the VA where the veterans would feel more comfortable.
That's called the Vet Center.
Yeah, Vet Center.
Out
Yeah.
on Eastland Mall.
Yeah, and well, there's one in Lawton and Oklahoma City too. Then you have the VA Regional Office, which the main office in this area is in Muskogee, and they handle all the benefits, service-connected compensation, if they've had some injury or illness they've obtained during their military time, or non-service connected pension, maybe they cannot work and they may be eligible for a pension. They handle the GI Bill, VOC rehab, everything comes out of that office. And then also under the umbrella is, of course, the national cemeteries. We have the one in Fort Gibson. So, and veterans do get confused and about the different entities. And so I was recently presenting to the Corps of Engineers, and I said, you know, if you're going to be mad at the VA, find out which piece of the pie you're mad at, so you'll be getting upset at the correct place. But because people don't understand that, I spoke with a younger veteran who was mad because his exam for his compensation was set up in the community, and because it didn't go so well, it was the VA, and it was this system that's just another government bureaucratic system. And I said, give us another chance. And I gave him the information actually for the combat care team, the returning veteran team in Oklahoma City, VA, which is where he was from. So just keep that in mind. And also, we are not prone to having employees that get a little cranky. at times. But know that there are staff there that care, and we want to know if there's a problem because we want to make it right.
Thank you, Julie.
Yeah.
First of all, thanks to you and Jim for being here with us today.